Hi, it's Ileana, and today I am going to be discussing Michael Relfe and his secret space program experiences, his 20 and back. And I was asked if Michael Relfe is a legitimate SSP experiencer, and if he's still around and alive. I'm not sure if he's alive or not, but from what I know, I haven't read any of Michael Relfe's books, but I highly recommend that people do, because Michael Relfe is the very first experiencer to discuss the secret space programs. So his books can be found at Mars Records, and that's the website, and the books are also called Mars Records. So his wife, Stephanie Relfe, had done hypnosis regression for Michael Relfe to find out about his time spent working on Mars and what that was like. So when I was asked today about Michael Relfe, I didn't know that Michael Relfe had discussed time travel and that it's connected to the Mars bases with the SSP programs. I've been discussing my own hypnosis memory regressions through self-hypnosis, how I had done the quantum leap, time travel 60 and back with the planetary corporations working at the cybernetics labs connected to the Mars bases run by Planetary Corp. So I guess this time travel component connected to the Mars bases, that's also what Michael Relfe had been discussing in his books and testimony. So I had done a search today on Michael Relfe on the internet because, again, I've heard of the Mars Records books, but I never read them, so I didn't really know too much about his testimony except that he had been in the army and had done 20 and back on Mars. So what came up in my search was the book, The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, The Afterlife, and The Secret Colony on Mars by Alfred Lambermont Weber. And Alfred is a researcher, an author, and a lawyer in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada, of all places. So apparently he did a case study on Michael Relfe and his testimony and put that in his book. So I'm just going to be reading part of that case study testimony about Michael Relfe and the testimony of Michael Relfe. And it discusses hyperdimensional war and quantum access technology. The possible hyperdimensional war has come to public light because of the operational use of quantum access time travel jump gates and quantum access technology at the US secret base on Mars. Now, I had been discussing that the US Navy and military and Army had built out their bases first on the moon in the 1950s with the help of Werner von Braun's technologies, the circular space stations, and building out underground bases. It started out in the 1950s with Project Horizon on the moon, and then they went on Mars in the 1980s and built out bases with dome-shielded technology that can cloak the bases, and also there's electromagnetic fields that protect the Mount Mars bases from space junk and other stuff from being attacked by weapons from space. And these bases are in craters, and so there's surface bases and parts of the base go underground, and it's protected by domed shields. And a lot of these bases can't be seen from telescopes because they are cloaked. So there's parts of that that are discussed in this book again. So again, the possible hyperdimensional war has come to public light because of the operational use of quantum access time travel, jump gates, and quantum access technology at the U.S. secret base on Mars. Quantum access technology is used to time travel U.S. armed service personnel who serve as permanent staff at that base and to age regress them back to their original time-space starting date after completion of their 20-year rotational cycle on Mars. The base thus may be hyperdimensionally cloaked from civilian society on Earth and hidden in covert niches in the time-space hologram, as described by former U.S. chrononaut Andrew D. Basiago. One early application of time travel technologies was the hiding of national security secrets from the Soviet Union during the Cold War, for example, by time traveling these secret documents to quantum access niches in the time-space hologram. Hyperdimensional war and quantum access technology. So that's what Alfred Lambert Weber discusses in his book. That's what he starts off with, and describing that Andrew D. Basiago also described the Mars base and time travel. And there's also the eyewitness evidence of warfare with hyperdimensionals. Two independent whistleblowers, both former U.S. Armed Service personnel stationed at the secret facility on Mars, have now come forth with detailed accounts of their experiences in warfare with hyperdimensional intelligent civilizations. Michael Relfe is one such whistleblower. A former member of the U.S. Armed Forces, he was recruited as a permanent member of the secret U.S. facility on Mars. In 1976 Earth time, he was teleported to the U.S. Mars facility and spent 20 years as a permanent member of its security staff. In 1996 Mars time, Mr. Relfe was time traveled via teleportation and age regressed 20 years, landing back at a U.S. military base in 1976 Earth time. Mr. Relfe then served 6 years in the U.S. military on Earth before being honorably discharged in 1982. He is a credible whistleblower whose life and career have suffered greatly because of his decision to inform the public of the secret war against hyperdimensional intelligent civilizations. In a 2-volume book authored by his wife Stephanie Relfe, The Mars Records, Relfe describes the two types of individuals at the secret Mars colony. There are two kinds of people that I remember. Number one, people visiting Mars temporarily, politicians, etc. They travel to and from Mars by jump gate. They visit for a few weeks and return. They are not time traveled back. They are VIPs. They are off limits. Number two, permanent staff. They spent 20 years duty cycle. At the end of their duty cycle, they are age reversed and time shot back to their space-time origin point. They are sent back with memories blocked to complete their destiny on Earth. Relfe also discusses the presence and functions of reptilian and gray extraterrestrials at the secret Mars colony. Now, at the base where I worked in the genetics lab, there was definitely reptilian presence. I worked with Zagor, the reptilian insectoid hybrid, who had helped me gain access to some of the genetics labs, not just the cybernetics labs, because I was frustrated. The human SSP personnel on one of the bases that I was at, they weren't allowing me to do genetics experiments. They only wanted me to work in cybernetics. And I had worked with Zagor and Dark Fleet Nachtwaffen, Reger, which is the Spanish faction of the Dark Fleet SSP. And we call it Nachtwaffen because parts of it are German and other parts of it are other countries working together, including Spain. I don't know why I was part of the Spanish Nachtwaffenreger faction, but I was. And I've always been fascinated with Spanish. I knew the language. I studied it in high school. So anyways, Zagor is from, I know him from Nachtwaffenreger. And because I was frustrated with the human personnel, scientists, it was leading me nowhere. In the cybernetics labs, he was called in to work with me and to give me access to the genetics labs. So I can attest that there is reptilian presence. It's not just humans working on the Mars basis. It's reptilians and Nordics and other humanoid-looking species. Below, Relfe is questioned under the direction of his wife, Stephanie Relfe, using memory retrieval technology. Now, I do memory retrieval remote viewing for clients and sessions. So Stephanie Relfe is a certified hypnotherapist, and that's how she got Michael Relfe's memories back, through specific types of hypnosis, memory retrieval, and that's what I call my techniques as well. So I have something in common with Stephanie Relfe because I'm a past life regression practitioner and a hypnosis practitioner. I specialize in memory retrieval of secret space program memories, extraterrestrial alien abductions, my labs. That's the kind of memory retrieval that I do through hypnosis and also through remote viewing memory retrieval. So the question is being asked, L, what about the reptilians, Michael Relfe? Yes, they are racially related, draconians, reptilians, greys. L, do any greys and reptilians live on the Mars base? Michael Relfe, yes, some are stationed there. I remember the greys as doctors or technicians. I believe the reptilians stay camouflage cloaked most of the time. They prefer to appear human because they are naturally fierce looking. Now, Zagor wears a smart suit. He wears a smart suit that's made out of nanotechnology, nano AI technology. So he can cloak himself, actually, and he does look humanoid. He's a reptilian insectoid hybrid. So that's interesting what Michael here says, because it jives with what Zagor is as well. The following excerpt from the Mars records illustrates the nature of the armed conflict occurring around the U.S. secret base on Mars and the types of weapons used. Relfe describes the secret Mars base as being under attack by a hyperdimensional enemy that apparently can time travel. This discussion begins with a reference to the time travel jump gates, the portals used for time travel age regression of permanent staff of the base, to return them to their original time-space point of departure from a U.S. military intelligence base on Earth. Now, I have described that there's a faction of the SSP called time corporations. So they provide all the time travel, quantum leap, slipstream technologies to the other SSP factions like planetary corporations. So that can mean portal gateways. It can mean teleportation portals as well. That kind of a technology, age regression technology, everything that Michael Relfe discusses here, holographic medical pods, the time corporations have been involved with having jump gates on Mars bases. I remember that as well, through self-hypnosis, and I've discussed that briefly at times. So it's quite interesting. A lot of what Michael Relfe discusses, I've discussed as well. So time corporations, they exist, and there's temporal time wars and multiple timeline incursions that have happened and been fixed by the technology that the time corporations have provided for the Mars bases for the planetary corporations. So it talks about the staff being age regressed, and they've done that on Mars through the holographic medical pods and 0-point technology for age regression. I actually discussed that with Crystal Goch in our pre-hypnosis interview a couple of weeks ago. So I was discussing that actually with her. So Michael Relfe goes on to say, I was not a jump gate technician, so I only remember things from a layman's point of view. This technology was a result of the Philadelphia experiment projects, as described by Dr. Al Bielek. It's one of those things that are, oh wow, fantastic, the first time you see them, and then they become taken for granted. I also remember that they were guarded really tight and that every moment of use was accounted for and logged. I remember that there were several jump gate stations on the Mars base. These stations were hooked to other places and they were defended against someone or something. I remember that RV technicians hooked to the machines assisted in that defense. Remember that tactical remote viewing is not only used to terminate targets. Termination is a tiny percentage of all operations. It is used mostly to defend against the enemy. It is used to defend very important people, VIPs, very important equipment, VIEs, areas and regions of the planet. In addition, some weapon systems require an RV operator to monitor and direct them. There are physical weapon systems, example like a particle beam projector, and there are other types of weapons that are energetic. Psi types of systems. Also, RV operators are commonly assigned to monitor attack craft on patrol. That's very much true. We on Mars in the cybernetics labs and on the bases, we had Neuralink implants that could monitor various craft and even pilot the craft in patrol ships. So we had pilots with Neuralink implants in their brains that would pilot craft and scout ships and patrol ships. And these Neuralink implants also interacted with our smart suits because those were our uniforms. So we could monitor a lot of things and also telepathically, psionically talk to each other through synthetic telepathy or natural telepathy, because the Neuralink implants boosted our natural psionic abilities, psi abilities, whatever you want to call it. So that also resonates with what Michael Relfe says about remote viewing operators and what they could do. The enemy also has psi types of weapon systems so that they direct against our physical type, static shielding. Static shielding doesn't change, it stays the same no matter what you throw at it. To augment the static shielding, you have RV operators that monitor and probe the shields looking for penetration. If penetration is discovered, an RV operator can trace the source through space-time and deal with the intruder. RV operators on duty are not alone. They have backup operators in addition to supervisor operators. They can instantaneously get backup if the need arises. I have seen many ads for books and courses for remote viewing. Most of what passes for RV at this time is about the first 3 or 4 days of training at the Mars base. And most people involved in this sort of thing would unfortunately never survive the training. The drugs would kill them quick. Referring to the drugs, Michael Relfe states, the drugs were used to stimulate and open up the metaphysical abilities of the candidate. I do not know the names of them. I remember them being gentle and interesting at first, but quickly the effects became hard and unpleasant on the body. Now, for myself, I had been given various drug serums, as I call them, to make me look younger, also to turn me into other extraterrestrial species, to literally change my genetic and molecular biology of my body to other genetics of extraterrestrials. So they do use drug serums on Mars for that kind of stuff. But these days, drug serums are not really used for biological drug serums aren't used to augment psionic abilities. Neuralink implants actually do that. They augment your psionics and make your psionics stronger, like telepathy, synthetic communication, connecting to the different databases, ships. So Neuralink implants have replaced the drug serums for that stuff. Because a lot have changed since that time. In one passage, Relfe recounts an attack run he undertook on an enemy ship where he lost consciousness when the enemy missile penetrated his ship. He was flying solo in a spaceship when he encountered an enemy craft. Instead of fleeing, he went for the enemy craft. It fired a missile at him, which did not explode his ship, but it did penetrate his ship and go through him. This caused incredible damage. He would have died had he not had a special suit, which was programmed to administer first aid. Relfe described the advanced technologies possessed by the hyperdimensional enemy. Now, the special suit Michael Relfe is talking about is the nanite smart suits that all the Mars bases have. And there's more than one Mars base, actually. That's U.S. Navy and U.S. Army and military. That's part of planetary corporations and other Earth-based corporations working outside of Earth with the advanced SSP factions. So Michael Relfe was describing these smart suits made out of nanite nanotechnologies. And they can administer first aid, and so that's what he's talking about. The hyperdimensional enemy has at their disposal multiple technologies that will allow them to abduct an individual from their bedroom, examine, operate, indoctrinate them, and return them to their bedroom without being detected. They can keep an individual for weeks and return them to a time a few minutes after they were taken. The names of those technologies that I am aware of are jump gate technology, fractal jump gate technology, transporter technology, fractal transporter technology, teleportation technology, fractal teleportation technology, time travel technology, fractal time travel technology, dimensional travel technology, fractal dimensional travel technology, wormhole travel technology, fractal wormhole travel technology, resonance technology, fractal resonance technology, magical technology, fractal magical technology, walk through the walls technology. Now the smart suits can do walk through the walls technology, fractal walk through the walls technology, a sender sending something into your room, a sender pulling you out of your room. So, and now we are talking about what is the hyperdimensional war about. The dimensional nature of the enemy's arsenal of weapon systems suggests that the enemy may be a third or fourth dimensional extraterrestrial civilization. There are other possible interpretations of the eyewitness evidence about whether there actually is a hyperdimensional war for control of the third dimension of our solar system. For example, who is the aggressor or invading party in this hyperdimensional war? First, Earthling humans may be the aggressor. The secret U.S. facility on Mars that itself uses jump room technologies may be perceived by the hyperdimensionals as an aggression by Earthling humans, inviting counterattack by the hyperdimensional enemy at the time travel jump gates of the Mars base. Second, the hyperdimensional enemy may be the aggressor. The U.S. facility on Mars may be a strategic forward position by the Earthling human forces in alliance with the Martian humans living under the surface of Mars to ward off threatened occupation of the Mars third time-space dimension by the hyperdimensional enemy. Now, when I was on Mars, I actually did get to meet the original Mars colonists, and they're tall. They have kind of golden brown skin with greenish brown eyes, black hair or dark brown hair. So a lot of them look Native American with ethnicity. So there is original Mars colonists, survivors on Mars. Because there had been a war on Mars, a nuclear war, and a lot of the atmosphere was destroyed from the blast, but there were survivors, humanoid survivors, that went underground. So I remember meeting them and talking to them, and they do speak English, or they have translation devices that can translate English. So I do remember that. And it's quite possible what's described here. Third, the armed attacks by the hyperdimensional enemy on the U.S. base on Mars may be part of an elaborate false flag deception scenario to create a Fox war against the evil extraterrestrials. Of these alternatives, it seems most reasonable to conclude that the hyperdimensional war around U.S. facilities on Mars are reported by Michael Relfe is accurate and is an example of hostile, competing interaction by intelligent civilizations based in other dimensions as possibilities. So I do think Michael Relfe is very credible, and he has described in this case study of what's described about Michael Relfe's experiences is that he did a 20 and back. He was time traveled, quantum leap time travel on a Mars facility. He talks about reptilians working with humans on the Mars base. He talks about smart suits, the special suit that monitored his life force energy and provided first aid. He talks about remote viewing operators piloting craft and monitoring patrols. So Neuralink implants are doing that in pilots now. So you don't need remote viewing ability. It's great if you have it. That makes you psionically special on your own, so you're already augmented naturally. But the Neuralink implants amplify those abilities even more. So a lot of the stuff that Michael Relfe mentions in this case study in Alfred's book makes sense, because there's a lot of facilities on Mars that are planetary corporations bases and US bases as well. So what Michael Relfe discusses is very much in alignment with what I've been discussing all along from 2016 in the beginning in all my presentations. So I thought I would compare and contrast this information, what Michael Relfe discusses, and what I've been discussing in my own presentations. So also that around the Mars bases, there's protective cloaking shielding. That's the domes, the electromagnetic domes. So they do cloak the bases, so you can't see them with telescopes from Earth orbit. And some of the space stations between Mars and Earth are also cloaked. The Werner von Braun type space stations, they're cloaked. So that's something else that's important here to know in that information, in that regard. So Michael Relfe really discusses a lot of things here that Alfred Lambermont Weber really took the time to research, obviously by going through the Mars Records books himself and looking up this information to do this case study. So these 5 pages that I just read, I wanted to compare and contrast Michael Relfe's testimony against my own testimony and compare it in some of the similarities. Because honestly, none of the other, well, Penny Bradley has talked about the cybernetics labs and the biological human cyborgs being made with nanotechnology. She's talked about 20s and backs. Also, Randy Kramer has talked about the 20 and back serving with Mars Defense Force. But nobody has used the terminology of quantum leap time travel. I've always been using the quantum leap time travel terminology, and that's the correct terminology for these types of interdimensional or dimensional timelines between Earth and Mars, because it's the same time space, it's the same timeline. It's just with quantum leap time travel technology, they can literally bridge a timeline to create like a bridge hub between one 3D reality and another one and connect it and take you to the Mars bases and then return you blank slated and you won't remember anything. And it's seamless because it works with 0 point technology for this quantum leap time travel to work. It works with 0 point. So it's seamless. 5 minutes on Earth can be 5 hours on Mars. And it's you wouldn't even know that time passed. That's how seamless it is. So, and Michael Relfe discussed that a little bit. So I just wanted to compare and contrast this information and share with you Michael Relfe's testimony, because I was asked if he's legit or not. And I was asked whether he's still alive or not. I know that Stephanie Relfe has generously shared the books of Mars Records on the website. They were shared for free. And Michael Relfe also shared the books for free. I'm not sure if Michael Relfe is alive or not. I'm not sure because this was a while ago. So that he had been in the army in 1970s, 1980s, I believe, from this testimony. He would, he says he was in the army, in the U.S. Army in the 1970s, 1980s, I believe. So he might, I'm not sure if he's alive or not. But his testimony does live on, and it's quite compelling about the secret space program. And he never called it the secret space program. He just called it military operations on Mars. So that it's quite interesting to have the secret space program terminology now coming in, that there's secret space programs and different factions of it. And more testimony of experiencers or SSP assets coming forward, and not just military people, but normal people who never were in the military. They've had these experiences as well of being SSP assets on Mars and beyond. So it's quite interesting. But Michael Relfe had been in the army, so he did have the army experience. So it's very interesting, and I just wanted to compare and contrast that information. And thank you so much, and namaste.